in the spirit of trying new things on YouTube and on this channel, I've thought about for a little while of reviewing books that I've read recently, or maybe not recently. It's something that seems kind of interesting and cool to me. I'd love to share my thoughts on some of my favorite or maybe my least favorite books. I don't intend on becoming like a full-on critic and making it like my full-time job or anything, or even a part-time gig. I just kind of want to do it when I feel like it. I don't want to review books consistently because I don't know, that would sort of take away from the enjoyment of reading for me. So when I have thoughts on a book that I've read, I've decided that maybe I'll make a review. And I have read a book, maybe like a couple weeks ago I finished it, or a month ago or so, and by the title of this video, you know that it is the first installment in the Wayfarers series. I believe it's a trilogy by Becky Chambers, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, right here. It's a science fiction book, space opera, futuristic, sci-fi stuff about a crew of tunnelers, people who make wormholes to get to different parts of the galaxy in this sort of far out future where the Milky Way galaxy is sort of a union of different species from different planets. Without getting into spoilers, I would say that it's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. There were a couple flaws. I'll get into those later, but in general, the characters were great. That part really stood out to me. For the most part, the characters were really well thought out and written. And the universe, although the premise of sort of a galactic alliance is definitely not an original one, I thought the premise of that was executed very well. And it was very imaginative and a fun ride, but also a thoughtful ride. And yeah, it made you think. That was one of the things that really stood out about it, was like all good science fiction, it makes you think and ponder things about our universe and different cultures, and what if we really did meet extraterrestrials and make alliances with them or have wars with them, etc. I can't say I'm well read in the science fiction genre. I'm relatively well watched. I've seen quite a few sci-fi movies, and in that way it's one of my favorite genres, but I have not read as much sci-fi as I would like. So that's sort of the lens I'm coming at this from, just to frame this for any like super huge sci-fi nerds out there who maybe would take issue with some of the things I'm saying. I don't know why they would, but I know that if you're really into something and then someone who isn't really into that thing starts talking about it, you can sort of be like, what? Huh? What are you saying? But so that's sort of the framing. I'm not a super huge sci-fi reader. This is one of the few sci-fi books that I've read, but I do watch quite a bit of sci-fi. Great universe, great character building for the most part, and a good premise and story. Okay, getting into more about the characters and stuff, let's start with my two biggest critiques, my biggest constructive criticisms for Becky Chambers, the author of this book. I'm just holding this book the whole time. I'm just going to set it down. You already know what it looks like. But my biggest critiques of the book would first of all be the character of Rosemary, who at first I thought would actually be like the main protagonist, before I realized this is like an ensemble cast, so like there's several main characters, but the character of Rosemary I thought had a lot of potential, and I hope it's explored more in further books. I like her backstory of being the daughter of this like billionaire evil guy who got arrested, and she had to change her identity, blah blah blah. I thought that backstory was really cool, and I thought the idea of her coming onto the ship, becoming the clerk, and sort of seeing things with fresh eyes, that was a good way to sort of, you know, to relate to a character, because you're seeing that world for the first time as well. And that's a well-known sort of plot device of having one of the characters be sort of your eyes. But my criticism of the way she was written was she was not written enough, and her character was not as developed as the others, maybe except for a couple of the minor ones like Ohan. But although they did go quite a bit into her past, I think there could have been she could have written a couple more chapters with Rosemary, sort of exploring who she is as a person and how she thinks. Maybe even showing her going into her new office for the first time and figuring out where things are and just sort of settling in as a clerk. We kind of skip over a lot of the stuff, that kind of stuff with Rosemary, and we just kind of hear things about her, and she's there and she observes some things. And a couple times we do get more emotional moments from her, especially when she's thinking about her past. But yeah, I think we could have, I would have liked to learn a little more about this character, and especially in contrast with all the other characters who were so well thought out and well written. But I think maybe the thing that made her not as well developed was she was supposed to be the shy one, right? Like, she doesn't talk as much as the others. She's always kind of in her head. But I think that could have been solved if there were just more chapters from her perspective, because while she may not express her thoughts as much, and this is coming from someone who's like introverted and shy himself, while she may not express her thoughts, she's certainly thinking them. So sort of seeing things from her perspective would have taught us more of who she is, just because she's thinking her thoughts, and we don't get to see her thinking her thoughts as much as I would have liked. So that's my criticism number one. Criticism number two is a little bit of a smaller one, and it didn't bother me as much, but we could have had better segues between scenes, and the transitions were a little jarring. I would have liked the little details of between the scenes to be explored a little more. Like they're on the ship, and then the next chapter, oh, they're on this planet, and then the whole chapter is about that planet, and then, oh, they're back on the ship. Like, the little segues could have been written in, rather than not written in. I don't know if maybe Becky Chambers did write those in, and the editor was like, no, that's too much. Who cares? We only need important stuff. But no, I think those little things matter, and I think that kind of goes into one of my criticisms of modern publishing. Is a lot of times I hear the sentiment, not just publishing but writing, the sentiment that everything that's written has to have some kind of importance, and that's not everywhere, and you do get a lot of littler things but these days. But I hear a lot of people being like, you have to make everything be important, and you can't have these scenes where nothing happens. But I think the scenes where nothing happens can be important too. So those are my two sort of big criticisms of the book. But they do pale in comparison to my enjoyment. Let's go a little more into that. What I enjoyed about the book, like I said, it makes you think, and I love the way she wrote the different cultures. They were very well thought out, the way that different species think and their philosophies on life and love and just everything and it was so mixed. Every species sort of had a couple things maybe in common with other ones, but then they had this whole different take on this, and it was just, a lot of the book was the examination of different approaches to life and thinking and emotion, and just all of that was great. I've seen a couple of reviewers of this book complain that not a whole lot of stuff happens plot-wise, but I think that was sort of the point. Like, the whole story is them, their journey to this other part of the galaxy, and not a bunch of stuff that has completely to do with their end objective happens, but it works really well, and it's an examination of different cultures and how different aliens might be and how they might think, and different philosophies on all sorts of different things. And in the end, you get the most weird and different culture of all, which is the Teremi, who fight to the death over different opinions. And the Teremi do not understand anybody else, and nobody really understands the Teremi. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing like different alien species names, but yeah, that was. And what I'm trying to get at is, she was great at examining these different ways of thinking and creating new cultures, and that is vastly important in fantasy and sci-fi, is trying to create well thought out cultures that go beyond just quirks and looks, and it goes into how they think and the heart of their cultures. That was probably the best thing about the book, actually. Maybe the second best thing, because the characters were for the most part phenomenal. Like I said, you have all these different perspectives from the different cultures, and the great character work and the great culture work meshes together to create this great tapestry of the fantastical space opera-ness. So that's sort of my weird, convoluted, unscripted review of The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. It was a good book, and I liked reading it, and I will be reading the second one and probably the third one after that. I'm pretty sure it's just supposed to be a trilogy, but if there's a fourth one, I'll probably read that one too. But yeah, I would recommend it if you're into sci-fi, or even if you're into fantasy, because, it's kind of similar approaches, world building, all that. Yeah, check it out, I guess.